So we just learned how to find the inverse graph of a function by reversing the inputs and outputs. Sometimes we may not actually want a graph, but we may want the inverse equation instead. Now, in order to do that, we're going to apply the same logic we did in our last video. All we're going to do is reverse x and y, our inputs and outputs. So if you look at these examples right here, all of them are asking us to find f inverse of x. So remember, f of x is the same thing as a y. So what I'm going to do here, when you see f of x and they ask you to find the inverse, I'm just going to write it down with a y right here. And I'm going to keep this in the same color because this is still the original function right here. So nothing has changed yet. I'm just replacing f of x with a y in all these examples. You should write it separately like this on your own in your notes because oftentimes you will see it start out with the f of x. So you need to be able to go, feel comfortable converting between those. So anyway, now that that's out of the way here, I want to find the inverse. And the way I'm going to do that is just like in the previous video, I switched my x and y coordinate. Here I'm going to switch my x and y variables. So x and y are going to trade spots right here. This is my inverse equation. But when we write equations, we like to have y by y itself. So after I switch them, I'm just going to get y by itself again, and then I'll be done. So what I have to do now is add 5 to both sides. So I get x plus 5 equals 2y, and I'm going to divide by 2 here. When you divide this out by 2, it's up to you if you leave it like this, or if you actually divide the 2 into both parts. It's easier to see that it's linear if you do the, actually dividing it out. So you'll end up with, it'll be 1/2 x, because it's like a 1 in front of this, and then plus 5 over 2 equals y for the first one. And what I'm going to do is put the f inverse of x symbol out front here. So this is going to be my inverse equation. You do need the f inverse piece because that tells you that it's actually an inverse. If you didn't want to write the y there, that's okay. But this is your equation that is the inverse of your other one. So on my next example here, I have this equation. I'm going to switch my x and y. Let me give myself a little space here. When I switch my x and y, I'm left with this. So kids will want to multiply this out right here, but if you do multiply that out and do FOIL with those parentheses, you're going to make more y's. You'll have 2 y's then from doing your FOIL, y squared and a regular y, and that's tough to solve. We actually don't want to FOIL this out. We're just going to subtract our 1. So we end up with x minus 1 equals y minus 2 squared. And then we're going to take the square root of both sides, because that will cancel out your squared. When you take the square root of both sides, don't forget you have to do the plus or minus. So I get plus or minus square root x minus 1 equals, it'll be y minus 2. And all I have to do then is add the 2 to both sides, and I'm going to stick that in front of the plus or minus. So my final inverse equation on this one here is f inverse of x equals 2 that I brought over, plus or minus the square root of x minus 1 like that. So this is my inverse equation, the one that will cancel out my original. We have one more example in this video, and I didn't give myself enough space, I don't think. So what I'm going to do here is erase those previous 2 examples. So if you guys didn't get those written down already, you might want to pause the video here. But we have one more to go, and we're going to find its inverse. So let's see. We have 2 times the cube root of x plus 4 right here. And if we're asked to find f inverse of x, we need to reverse the x and y. So I'm going to do that. And I'll write that over in my newfound space here. I end up with x equals 2 times the cube roots of y plus 4. Well, the first thing I need to do is get rid of this 2. I'll do that by dividing by 2 on both sides. So I end up with x over 2, or 1/2 x if you prefer, equals the cube roots of y plus 4. Well, to cancel out a cube roots, I need to cube both sides of my equation right here. So what I end up with is x over 2 to the 3rd power. Now, if you remember back from our properties of exponents, when you have an exponent outside parentheses like that, you can basically give it to both parts. So what I'm left with here is x to the 3rd, and 2 to the 3rd is going to be 8. So it's x to the 3rd over 8 equals y plus 4, because the cubed and the cube root cancel. And then I just subtract my 4. So I could make this a 1/8 right here, or I can just leave it like this. But this would be my inverse equation right here. The process is always the same. You switch x and y, you get y back by itself.